feeding cows in our dairy barn right now, and there's a lot of different things that go into a dairy barn to keep everything running efficiently. Everything from the cows themselves putting out the milk that we in turn put in the bulk tank and the hauler comes and hauls away, to feeding them, and even to keeping clean their mess that they make in the barn. We feed square bales to the chutes. We have one right here and there's one over in the middle of the walkway. We throw down square bales from upstairs. When we're building up in there, what we do is we keep a hole in the center over that hole so that in the winter we can throw the bales down in the hole and they'll come down the chute and land right here. Usually what we do is we throw down a couple for the morning, then we feed in the morning. It takes anywhere from 4 to 7 depending on how much they've been eating on each side. That also varies on how many cows you have in the barn. We probably have maybe like somewhere between 30 and 40 in here right now. We're milking around 30. You want to keep plenty of cows in the barn so that the pipes in the barn don't freeze, because we have a water line right here that goes around the entire barn. It goes down to the watering cups. For these cups, when they want to get water, what they have to do is press this button and it'll start feeding and it'll fill that up. Usually they start to learn that on their own because we just throw them in here and they start playing around. They push the button and they realize that they can get water. We got to keep fans in here for good aeration. We have 3 small fans along the edge of the barn. Over on the other side over there, right in the center of their screen, you see there's that, I don't really know what to call it. It's kind of like it's basically so air can come in. I don't know what to call it. It's basically an apparatus that lets the air come in from the outside. So the fans are over here. It draws the air in through over there, and it takes it back out right here. That keeps the air moving, especially on hotter days. If it's colder outside and it's really warm in here, what'll happen is that you'll see a lot of like fog coming in through that metal thing, let's call it, going along the edge of the wall. We got these things hanging down. On those are outlets. We have a 240 volt outlet right there for the straw chopper because it takes 240. The straw chopper has a long cable on it that we can string off. We can take it down the barn, and that's how we feed, or that's how we give the cows bedding. There is a phone jack there for a telephone. We used to have a telephone there. We don't anymore because we don't really use them out here anymore because we have our cell phones. There is one in the milk house out there. Junior's standing in the manger. We keep our four-wheeler in here over the winter because in the spring, time comes around when we let the cows out, then we need the four-wheeler to go out and chase them. What else we got here? We got plenty of windows to let a lot of light in. We have windows that run along the inside of the barn. We can open those up, and we do open those up in the summer to let more air come through because it gets really hot in here if you don't have the fans running. And all these cows are putting off so much heat, especially from sitting out in the sun all day. They really start to release heat. It gets really hot in here, so you got to keep the air flowing. It's extremely important. This is what we call our grain room. Now, this has 2 harvesters that feed into it. All our switches are out here. You can see this side, the belt and the plow. And we have switches for all the conveyors. The conveyors go up in the barn. When we stack bales in the summer, we work around those. There's a flap down there at the end of the barn. You can't really see it, but it's got a chain link on it that we can pull down. It'll start feeding on this side. Now back to the grain room. Over here is our corn harvester. I believe it's 40 feet tall. It just feeds out of an auger right here. It feeds down into this mill. What the mill does is it cracks the corn so that cows can process it easier. We've got a magnet sitting in there. The reason for that is because we just replaced the roof, and that magnet, if they dropped a lot of spare bolts and stuff, any of the bolts that they dropped off, they dropped into the corn. They might have missed picking up some, so they come out at the bottom. What that does is it catches them. It's really nifty, but it's really simple, and it's extremely effective. Now this roller, there's just two metal rolls in there that run, and they just split the corn. They run closely together, so that splits it. Over here we've got our mineral. It's super milk maker, I believe they call it. It operates on a switch. We can adjust, there's a little dial here, we can adjust how fast it feeds out. Just flick that switch on, and they'll start feeding out the top. We have to fill that every few days. Over here we have our switches. This turns on the corn harvester, starting off. This starts the mill. Now, over here, that's the switch for the hay harvester, which we don't use because the hay harvester has its own switches up here on top. Up on top is start, the second one is reverse, and the last red one is stop. There's an arm around on the inside of the silo that we can move. Pull out on that, we turn it. What that does is it switches, it slowly goes around, it has another arm on the inside that collects all the hay. Here's where it comes out. The hay that is coming out of this harvester is significantly warmer than the outside air temperature. This is due to decomposition throughout the winter. It just keeps fermenting inside the harvester, which keeps it warm. We operate each of these fans with these humidity controls. It controls the temperature. We can set for the temperature we want it to be, and if it gets too high, the fans will turn on. There's 3 of these in the barn down there. There's 2 more hanging on this side. There's actually fans up that go outside the top of the barn. So now over there is the trainers. It's just basically just an electric fence that we have strung up, and it goes around the entire barn over the length of the cows. And hanging over each of the cows is one of these things. It's adjustable. It has this little ring here that we can move up and down. What these do is, yeah, they're called trainers, but what they're actually supposed to do is we turn them on and we leave them running. We go through over all the cows and we adjust it so they're maybe like 1 or 2 inches, maybe a little bit more over their back. And what we'll do is we'll leave them there, and then every time the cows have to crap or pee, then they'll back up. That's the idea behind it, so that cows like to hunch up when they crap. So that's to kind of avoid getting them covered in their own feces, to help keep their teats clean. That way if they back up, they're more apt to get it in the gutter than below themselves. Cows are basically just like hogs. If they can lay in their own crap, they will. So that's the reason we use trainers. That wire runs along the underside of the entire barn. 76 and the 4230 up there. This is the milk house. This is where everything comes to a point in the barn. The milk will come down through these 2 lines. In a vacuum, gravity still takes its effect. So depending on which side it is, the milk will either come down through this pipe if it's on the far side, or through this pipe if it's on this side. Down at the end of the barn, the pipe starts off higher, and it's connected, but it's higher, and then it slowly slopes down to this point, and it dumps it in this jar. And in there you can see the 3 sensors. When the milk comes down, it'll fill up to a point, and then this motor will kick in because of this little control box up here. There's even a little switch up here that right now it's on auto. I can turn it off and I can switch to manual, but it'll only run if the milk pump's running. And that's what this lever is for. Turn that on, the vacuum will start. This motor will throw it up into this pipe. It'll take it down over to the bulk tank. Right now we have it switched so it comes over here. That's standard procedure. Now there isn't technically supposed to be things like milk bottles sitting in the milk house, but it doesn't really apply right now. So here's where we have our milkers. They're hanging there because we cleaned them this morning. We have to clean them morning and night, just to make sure that we kill any bugs that might come up. You don't want anything proliferating inside the milk lines. What we use for that is we use acid, detergent, acid, this is acid, and sanitizer. Detergent is just soap. Acid is just that, it's acid. It's to keep the inside of the pipes clean. And sanitizer kills any bacteria that might be living inside the milk line. What we do is we fill these two things up here, these two vats. These will have suction in them when we turn these little switches on. Right now they're on. When you're not using them and they're hooked up to the vacuum, you pull it out and then this will come up and it'll plug the pipe so there won't be a suction. When you're hooking it up to the cow, you got to pull this out so it's not sucking. You got to put it under the cow and then you got to flip that on. Now what these do right here is they pinch off the vacuum. So if, let's say, this, instead of coming straight down, if it's coming out to the side to out here, then the vacuum will shut off in this and it's a lot easier to put on the cow. You can control the vacuum just from the angle. That's in all of these. Now these will come up and we got the second pipe running around the barn. This controls the vacuum. There's inside these, it switches back and forth to kind of give a rubbing sensation, and that's what pulls the milk out. That was a newer technology that was introduced quite a few years back. My grandparents never used to use those, they just had the vacuum. It makes milking a lot faster and a lot more efficient. But yeah, that's what these do. It supplies another vacuum, and these boxes here flip back and forth where the vacuum goes to back and forth inside the cup. So this pipe goes out to the vacuum out in another room, and that's what controls, that's where all the suction comes from. Now here we have our bulk tank. Over here is the cleaning station, that's what I call it, and the control center. There's 3 different options here for the switch. You can have cool, wash, and off. Here's the agitator timer. We don't mess with that. And here's what we use to control how we clean it. When the milkman comes and picks the milk up, he attaches that to the tank. He fills these up. Here's acid, and this should be detergent. We just haven't filled this one up yet. But he'll flip this over to watch, and then I'll pull out on this. And I'll put it to this cycle, and it'll run around. Then about 45 minutes later, we'll have to come in. We'll have to put sanitizer into this bucket, container, whatever you want to call it. And we'll have to turn it back to sanitize, and we'll have to pull out on it. And that'll run the sanitizing cycle. And once it runs the sanitizing cycle, we don't have to do anything else. We can just go ahead and start milking, because the sanitizer that we use is approved by the FDA to we can rinse out and then you can immediately start putting milk in there. It's safe for that. So it's actually recommended that you don't clean it. I think that's because of the danger of contracting any diseases. We got a fan in here. Yeah, the floor gets wet because we dump out all of the water that we use to wash. It comes out right here. We throw it onto the floor or into the vat. We have a little tube back there for it that we can hook up and control where the water goes. Here's where our socks are. What these are is kind of like the first step of filtration. We can take this pipe off here, and then there's a little spring in here. If I shake it, you can hear it. This is facing down, the milk comes out and it pushes against it. It runs the milk through that, and it just kind of filters out anything large that could be in there. Like I said, that's the first step of filtration. We have a mini heater in here just to kind of keep things a reasonable temperature and avoid heating. Our water heaters here are set for higher than most house water heaters are. That's because it has to be a high enough temperature to kill any diseases. If I turn on that water and I put my hand under it, it'll burn about twice as much as a house heater. So we got a trash bin there. We got tit dip here that we use to clean their tits after we dip. We do that so that to prevent mastitis, reduces somatic cell counts. We have 4 lights in here. We also have another room back here that's just kind of like a storage space. We have a fridge sitting up in the back there. It's rusty on the outside, but it's been sitting there for a while. So what we just keep in there is any of like our syringes and any of our medication for the cattle. You know, if you really wanted to, you could keep a milk in there for milking or something like that, so you can have something to drink. We got our salt softener, water softener back here. Here's our milk cart. We keep it in here. That's part of regulations. It's to keep the milk house kind of sanitary. I mean, you don't want anything that's been out in the barn to really been anything that's been sitting out in the barn to be in the milk house for an extended period of time. It's just regulations. So yeah, that's kind of like our storage closet.
Maybe we'll do that before we go home. We'll get some out.
Alright, we're done milking into the bulk tank now, so I can go ahead and pump this out. Flip it back on. What we'll do is this bucket here. Woo. Take this bucket. Right there. Over to the bulk tank. Pull this out. I gotta set the camera down, so. There we go. Just like that. Now what we gotta do is take out the sock. This usually makes a mess. Take that out. There's the sock. Put this back in. Hook it back up.